What's up, everybody? Straw Hats Are Cool here, and we're back again with another video. Today we're going to be doing yet another market watch video, but before we dive into the video, as always, I just want to say a special thanks to everyone who's been supporting me and the channel. We're still growing at a pretty solid rate, hoping to hit 2,500 subscribers soon. That's another goal, quarter of a way to 10k. Be awesome to hit that goal. So if you're enjoying the content, please do consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you've not done so already. And if you are interested, we do also have a Discord where we talk about the market and just the game in general. Link for that will be down in the video description. And if you're looking to pick up any cards off of TCG Player, I have an affiliate link which will also be down in the video description. If you use that link and buy any cards off of TCG Player, a small percentage of your purchase will go towards supporting me and the channel. But with that, let's go ahead and jump right into today's market watch. I do think that this one is going to be a little bit shorter, as a whole we're kind of seeing the market trend downward, and I don't want to spend too much time just looking at each card that's dropping, because really as a whole we're just going to see that a lot of cards are dropping in price, but we are also going to see some stuff that is getting seen some substantial increases in price over the last week. But starting things off as always with our manga rares, we've got Shanks here at about $2,500. We've not had a ton of sales. Again, you don't expect to have a ton of sales on these high-end expensive cards. We did have a Japanese PSA 10 sell for only about 1,200, which is significantly lower than an ungraded English copy of the card. So just kind of goes to show you how much the prices vary from the English to Japanese versions of the game, which is a bit unfortunate, but is what it is. So overall, I think Shanks has still come down a little bit from where it was, but 2,500 is still a lot, and I don't think it's going to get much lower than this, to be honest with you, but only time will tell. We do still have those alleged reprints coming at some point, so if we do get some more OP01 out on the market, we will see some more Shanks hitting the TCG Player as well, which could affect the price, and you could see some more decreases in the price. But as a whole, manga rares for the English version of the card game are just looking to be quite expensive, especially in comparison to the Japanese version. English version cards are generally more expensive. Ace is about 1,500, not really any different from last week if I recall, but we did have one listing sell more recently since we did our last video on the 8th. This one was at about $1,100, so a bit lower than the current listings are here. Don't know if this was a verified seller or not, so could end up being one of those scams, but I don't know. This one feels like it's close enough to the other ones that it seems reasonable, seeing as we did have some sell at that $1,200 to $1,300 mark, but definitely a little suspiciously low in comparisons to some of the other listings. However, we haven't seen any listings sell at the current price point since about a month ago, so could just be someone wanting to make some quick cash and unload their manga Ace. So hopefully, if you were the person that bought this, it was a legit listing and you end up getting your card, because that seems like a pretty good deal in comparison to where the current price point is at. For Soga King, we've seen just a very slight decrease in price from last week, maybe about $25. I think it was about $725 last week. We are having some sales now at this $700 price point. We did also have some sales shortly after the last video at the $500 price point. Again, I don't know if these were from verified sellers with positive feedback, but they are quite a bit lower than the current other listings, so there is a chance these were not legit listings. I mean, this one's a lightly played, so I'd say there's a better chance for that one, but a near mint at 554 is considerably lower than the other listings. And we are still seeing them sell around that $700 price point, just not at a very, consistent, frequent rate as of right now. But $700 on the Soga King. For Sabo, we're looking at $650, so still less than a Soga King now again. We've kind of seen these two trading places with each other being kind of neck and neck for where they're at in terms of price. We haven't seen any sales on the Sabo since last week at about 700. So the fact that we've got a listing here at 650 and it's not selling might go to show that there's still room for this one to drop down in price even just a little bit more, with people not willing to fight at this price point. Again, you do always have to keep in mind that $650, while significantly less than some of your other manga rares like Ace, Shanks, and Luffy, it is still a lot of money to be spending on one cards. So really, you shouldn't be expecting to see a whole lot of sales on these cards at a very consistent rate. But we do have listings now cheaper than the previous sales, so we may see this one continue to drop down in price just a little bit more. For Eustace Kid, we're I think just on the dot for where we were at last week, still $900. However, this one is from a seller who hasn't sold anything in a while. We have one here for 1,000, not a gold star seller, but they've got a lot of sales and solid feedback, so probably legit. But we're seeing this one sell at around that $800 to $900 price point now. But probably we might not see this one sell just because of the seller being newer and not having a lot of feedback right now. For Trafalgar Law, we were just a little bit lower than we were last week. I think last week we were at $1,000. Now we're at $950, so just about $50 cheaper than we were last week. We had two sales last week, one at 900 and one at about 970. So continuing to see this one come down just a little bit more, which I think is good. I think of the manga rares, this one was probably the most inflated for the set 5 ones at the very least. I mean, while it wasn't the most expensive one, I do expect Luffy will always be significantly higher just due to the fact that it's Luffy. Law, also a popular character, as we always mention, but this card, you know, I still think it was just significantly overpriced in comparison to the others. I definitely think it deserves to be more in line with Eustace Captain Kid. So glad to see this one's come down, and now Law and Kid are kind of around the same price point. I think that's nice to see. And then for Luffy, we are at 3,800. Might be the same as it was last week. There was a listing that popped up at 3,400, and that one did sell this past week. So now the cheapest listing again is this one here at 3,800. This was the cheapest listing for a while, and then that one got listed, but it did eventually sell. So back at 3,800 for the Luffy, but seems like not willing to buy at this price point. But we did finally get another sale here with your $3,400 price point. We did have a PSA 10 sell for 5,200 as well in the last week, so quite a lot of money for one card. So if you've got a manga Luffy, probably worth grading it. I should probably do the same with mine, but never really dabbled much with the grading, so a little bit nervous to do so. But I do have quite a few cards that I do think I should be submitting to either PSA or Beckett. But I think if you're just looking to get kind of an easy PSA 10, you know, PSA is the way to go. It's a lot harder to get the 10 from Beckett, from what I can hear, from what I know, which isn't a lot. But anyways, for last chase card, we've got your Monkey D. Luffy with the Oda signature on it. We got a lightly played here at 1,800 and a near mint just shy of $2,000. We had a couple sales shortly after we posted the last market watch, but not a ton of sales on this one either. They are selling at that $1,800 to $2,000 price point. So seems like kind of this one has been the most stable of the others. We've seen, you know, the mangas of set 5 fluctuating quite a bit in price, but this one's been pretty consistent around that $2,000 price point, which seems to be about what people are willing to pay for this one. So overall, not a lot of big changes for our manga rares this week and our Oda signature Luffy, but still like to talk about those, even though we're not seeing a lot of changes right now. But we are starting to see some of them dip down just a little bit in price, which is nice to see. But with that, let's go ahead and jump now into our main sets, starting with OPO1. For leader cards, no huge changes, but we are starting to see your Crocodile and Kaido leader come down, which I think is good. Those two were definitely very overpriced in my opinion. I think at one point we saw these both over $200. I know for sure the Crocodile was up over 200. Not sure. Yeah, we even had some sales beginning of last month at $240, which was absolutely absurd. Definitely hope you weren't one of the individuals who panicked and bought at that price point, as we are now seeing it down at $135. And for Kaido, we're still a little bit more expensive, which makes sense. I think Kaido is a more popular character than Crocodile. But again, around the beginning of the month, we did see this one hitting about $200 as well. So come down pretty significantly from there. But as a whole, been pretty stable. Doflamingo holding this about $250 price point, and they are selling. We are getting what looks to be some fairly solid support for Warlords in OPO7. We are getting a lot of spoilers for that set now, and we've seen there is a Warlord Searcher and a new 4-cost Jinbei, which I do think will synergize very well with what the Doflamingo deck wants to do. Will it be enough to bring this deck back into meta relevance? We'll have to wait and see, but definitely getting some new tools to play around with in OPO7. So again, pretty stable for the most part, but we are seeing your Blurple leaders drop down in price a little bit. Odin and King very consistent. Law and Zoro being your top end, not any serious changes here. And then Luffy just being Luffy, while not a playable card. Still maintaining that high price point just as a hot item for collectors to pick up. For your sealed OPO1, no serious changes again, but we are seeing that the price did drop down a little bit, kind of as we mentioned last week. Might be even just a little bit lower than it was last week, but not any significant changes. I do think of the main sets for sealed product, these ones are going to hold the most value, and while they are dropping right now, I do anticipate that in the future they will continue to go back up in price. For main set cards, we've got Nami here. Really just bringing up Nami because we haven't talked about her in a while, and she is still, I believe, the most expensive non-leader, non-manga card from the set. So most expensive character alt from the set, $330 now. If we look at this one over the past year, it's kind of just gone up and up and up. We did see it dip around the time we got the ban and restricted announcement a little bit, but then it quickly shot back up in price. It does have the market price here at $386, which is considerably higher than the lowest listing right now. So not the most accurate there, but still definitely climbing back up in price. And I'm sure we'll continue to see it climb in price more and more as the game continues to grow, be successful. For Eustace Captain Kidd, now this is where we get into one of the more interesting cards of the video. So last week we looked at Kidd, and I believe he was $17, maybe $18. And I'd mentioned that I thought it was a good time to pick this one up because we are seeing green start to see a lot more success in the OP06 format, and this is looking to hold true into the EBO1 format now that we are getting, you know, list popping up, winning flagships, championships, and the Japanese nationals as well. So for those who don't keep up as much as I do with stuff, Uta, the new starter deck Uta green leader, did win the Japanese national championships, and they were running copies of Eustace Captain Kidd. So I think having Uta win, coupled with the fact that we recently had Uta release in the West as well, has definitely caused this one to explode a bit in price. And I'm not sure what to think about this one, whether or not it will come down in price. I think Uta, a lot of people are very excited to play this deck. And coupled with the fact that we're going to see this card seeing more play in some of the new leaders from set 6 as well, we might see this one being a new card more similar to Borsellino, where we're really a rather expensive SR. I do think that once we pass that kind of $25-$30 price point, we get into some, dangerous territory, I guess. I think having a generic SR like this being $35, Borsellino being $40 is not healthy for the game personally. I think in an ideal world, your playable SRs are somewhere between $10 and $20. To me, that seems more reasonable for a non-alt SR, but this is just kind of the situation we're in right now, where we do have Kid being $35 right now. If you're looking to pick this one up, my suggestion would be to just keep an eye on this one and see kind of what happens. If it starts going up more, you may just need to kind of bite the bullet. $35 might be the best you're going to do, but there is, I'd say, still a good chance that this one does come back down a little bit. But with Uta being new here and the fact that we're seeing it is now getting some more support that allows it to see success at top level competitive play in EBO1, I'm not sure how much we'll see this one drop down in price now. Alt hasn't changed a whole lot in price, but we're back up to $75. Last week we were at $65, so not a big increase for your alternate art, but still an increase. But definitely the big winner here is the regular art for your 8-cost Kid. Moving on now, I just briefly want to talk about the Warlord stuff. As I did mention with the Doflamingo leader, we are seeing more Warlord support in OP07. So I've got pulled up your Doflamingo blocker, Boa, both SR and alternate art, as well as Mihawk, both SR and alternate art. Now, as a whole, if we look at the price points, I'll start with the alts. Recently, over the last month, we've seen a pretty significant drop in price on these cards. So all three of them going down in price. We did see kind of, OP01 as a whole saw a huge increase in price kind of beginning of the new year. But now things are starting to calm back down, and we're seeing these cards drop down as well as a result of that. But I'm bringing these up because we are getting that support in EBO or OP07. We did get, I think, a little bit of support maybe in EBO1, but we're getting a lot of new support in OP07 as we're getting the new Boa Hancock leader. So we're getting a lot of new Warlord support for that deck. We got, as I mentioned, a Searcher, but what I think may end up happening is we could see a new variant of Sakazuki start to pop up once we have OP07 released, because with that Searcher, you're able to search the new Boa Hancock SR from OP07, which I think synergizes pretty well with Sakazuki, being able to prevent a character from attacking as well as bottom decking a 1-cost character on a 6-cost 8,000 power body. Seems very powerful, so being able to search that is good. You can search cards like your Doflamingo, the Boa Hancock blocker, and I'm not so sure about this one, but I'll get into why in a minute, as well as your Dracula Mihawk, which is a card we have seen popping up here and there in your blue-black Sakazuki decks. But with the Searcher, all of these cards just become inherently more consistent, coupled with the fact that you have your leader ability to cycle a card every turn. I think these could be pretty good. But the real reason I think we could see this start to pop up is because in OP06 we get the new 8-cost Gecko Moria character, which becomes a staple of in Sakazuki decks in the OP06 format. And that is searchable because it is a Warlord as well. So being a blue-black combination, you're able to use the new blue searcher to search out your Gecko Moria. Now, the Gecko Moria could also grab things like the Boa Hancock and the Doflamingo for your 4 cost or lower off of its on play, which could lead to some pretty cool combos. Not sure how good it will end up being, but I do think we could start seeing Dracul Mihawk popping up more, because if this mono green Uta deck that ended up winning the Japanese Nationals continues to be a meta threat, I think honestly Mihawk's a pretty good answer to the 8 cost kid in that deck, as you can just attack, and while you're not getting any immediate value out of your attack, since you have to swing into the kid more often than not if it's on the field, but with your -1 when attacking, the Dracul Mihawk on its own can bottom deck that Eustace Captain Kidd, which I think could be a pretty powerful effect, especially if it is now searchable off of the Sengoku searcher. But that's all just very heavy speculation, so I could see these ones starting to go up in price again because of that Warlord support, and I think we could potentially see some new variants of Sakazuki popping up in the OP07 format. But that is, like I said, all just speculation. Only time will tell, and I'm very excited to wait and see where and how the format develops in the OP07 format once that releases over in the East. But that's it for OP01. Let's now jump into OP02, starting things off, of course, with our leader cards. As a whole, again, everything for a leader-wise is pretty, stable. I think Newgate's starting to come down just a little bit. I think, we saw it at about $200 not so long ago, and since then it is starting to dip down in price a little bit, which is nice to see. Overall, I think your set 2 alternate arts, while some of them are fairly expensive in terms of alternate art leaders, I think this one, you've got some of the most reasonably priced ones, which is nice to see. For your sealed product for OP02, we have seen a rather big decrease in price for this one. At its peak, we saw this one just shy of $400, and as of right now, we're looking at about $300. So almost 25% decrease in price, which is pretty bad if you're someone who's been holding on to a lot of this product. Again, like I said with OP01, while this drop in price is significantly greater than what we saw for OP01, I do imagine that over time they will go back up in price again. So I wouldn't necessarily panic and sell your product now if you've been holding on to sealed product, but like I always say, sealed product really isn't something I care too much about, and it's not something I buy or hold on to, so really I'm not the person to give advice on this. But personally, I think if I was an investor who was holding on to this product, I'd probably hold it and just see how things develop from here. If you bought on release for around MSRP, you're still winning pretty big, even if you sell now. But personally, I'd probably just keep my eye on it, hold on to the product. While we are supposed to be getting reprints, I don't imagine they'll be all that large scale. I don't think the reprints are going to be on a very large scale, so we might see things drop down a little bit in price, but ultimately I think things are still just going up from here. So personally, I would hold on to these if you've got them. For your main cards from the set, we've got your Film Luffy, which we've been seeing going up and up in price over the last couple weeks leading up to the release of Starter Deck 11 in the West. And same thing with your Nami, and now with the Uta deck seeing success again in the EB01 format, I do expect these to either hold their value, if not go up more in price from here. These cards have not seen any significant changes from last week. However, your regular art for Nami is now at $35. I believe when we looked at it last week, it was still around $20. And I did suggest that if you were looking to play Uta, I would pick those up, because While again, I'll say I do think it was a missed opportunity from Bandai to include this card in the Uta starter deck. You know, ultimately, if you're looking to play that Uta starter deck, this is a card you're going to need 4 of to play that deck. And now we've got that deck released here in the West, and it's seeing more success. So much success that it did win, like I said, the national championships in Japan. I don't expect this one's going to come down a whole lot. I've been seeing a lot of kind of talk around this card in the last 24 hours or so. A lot of people bringing up that we are getting that reprint. I still don't feel like it deserves to be called a reprint from the collection you were able to pre-order off of Premium Bandai. But we are getting those. Will it affect the price of the regular SR? I'm not too sure about that, but what I would say is if you're not really looking to play Uta right now, but maybe might be interested in playing it in EBO1, the collection I believe come out around sometime in April, and I don't think we'll have EBO1 yet. So if you're not looking to play Uta right now and you did pre-order some copies of the binder, I would sell your Namis now, and then you'll just get your, your premium collection binders sometime in April, and then you'll have your Namis from that to play in your deck once EBO1 releases. If not, I don't know if I'd say buy these cards now, because I do think they'll come down, but I think ultimately it depends on how much Uta starts seeing success in the EBO1 format, and if it continues to see success into the OP07 format. So just have to wait and see on that one. But if you have pre-ordered your binders for the collection way back months ago, and you're not interested in playing Uta in the current format, I would sell your Namis now. For Borsellino, I know we talk about this in every week, but we are starting to see this one dip down in price a little bit. At its highest, we saw it around $50, and we're down at about $40. Still absurd price for an SR in my opinion, but is what it is. It sees a lot of play in OP06, and it is still seeing quite a bit of play in EBO1. But what I will say is that from what I can tell, it is seeing less play in the EBO1 format. I've been looking at a lot of the Sakazuki's lists that are doing well, including the one that got 4th place at the Japanese National Championships. And that list actually did not run any copies of Borsellino. A lot of the lists that are still running Borsellino in EBO1 are only running 2 copies. We are still seeing it played in decks like Gecko Moria, typically around 3. But your Sakazuki decks are now cutting this card, and we're starting to see a kind of a resurgence of play for cards like Kuzan. The list that got 4th at the Japanese National, I do believe, was running 3 copies of your 4-cost Kuzan. So from what I could tell in OP06, the Kuzan actually saw a significant decline in play. Most decks either not playing it or only playing 1 to 2 copies. But now in the EBO1 format, and while we are still very early in this format, I am seeing most lists running 2 or more copies of the Kuzan, while Borsellino has either been reduced or cut entirely from the decks. So we could see kind of, maybe the Borsellino and Kuzan SRs kind of stabilize in price. So we could see Kuzan go up a little bit, but Borsellino go down a little more. Not too sure on that. Well, again, we'll still have to see where the meta develops, but Borsellino is looking to see less play EBO1, while Kuzan is looking to see more. So I would keep your eye on Kuzan, and if you've not got your copies, while I've been saying I don't think this is a card you need, if it continues to see a lot of play in black decks in the EBO1 format, might be worth picking up a couple copies of this card. Kind of the same thing for the alternate arts. Not any huge changes for either of the 2 alternate arts. If we look at the past month, I mean, we've seen it coming down a little bit. More or less, the Porcelino has been around 120, 130, whereas your Kuzan's been pretty stable around $75. We did see some listings around 80 as well, but I guess those are if you're looking for your verified seller, which, you know, a lot of times I would recommend. Like, honestly, I think this one here is probably a safe buy, but you know, so Kuzan, definitely want to keep your eye on. Will it see more play and success in the EPO1 format over in the East? We'll just have to wait and see. But as of right now, looking like this car is starting to see substantially more play. So could be one you want to pick up if you've not got this one in your collection yet. But that's going to be it for OPO2. Let's now dive into OPO3. For our leader cards, you know, most of your, you know, your Lucci, your Arlong, Iceberg, Linlin, and Kuro, all going back down in price. We did see kind of towards the beginning of the year, there was kind of a mass buyout on almost everything. OPO 1, 2, 3, all of these cards just went up pretty significantly beginning of the year. Now we're seeing things settle back down. Cards like Kuro, you know, I don't think this card should be more than, you know, this $35 that it is right now. Yeah, it's an alt art leader and it looks cool, but not a popular character and certainly not a viable leader in the current format. So glad to see these leaders dropping down in price. Still got your Ace, Nami, Katakuri leading the pack. Katakuri, I could see this one honestly going up more in price. Katakuri got second at the Japanese National Championships, and we are seeing Katakuri see a lot of success in the EBO1 format in general. Like I said, we're only a couple weeks into the format over in the East for EBO1, but we have been seeing a lot of Katakuri doing very well. Really only got one new card from EBO1, a new 2K counter, but seems to be enough to keep the deck relevant and in the current format. So is what it is. But honestly, as we get farther and farther away from the release of set 3, I could see this one going up in price even more just because of how much success it is still seeing in future formats. Now, for sealed product, we are seeing it start to come down for OPO3 as well, peaking around 250. We're back now down at about 215. Not a big decrease in price for this one, but it is coming down. Kind of like I said with OPO2 though, probably wouldn't panic and sell these. You know, hold on to them, and I'm sure eventually they'll go back up in price again. In terms of cards from the main set, really the only stuff worth talking about, kind of as we've seen in the last couple weeks, is your yellow stuff. And even that, there haven't been any significant changes here. We do see that your Parosparrow's only got 20 listings left, which I thought was worth pointing out. Parosparrow's seeing a lot of play in those Katakuri decks that we talked about in the future formats. So if you don't have a Parosparrow alternate art, might want to pick these up now because we are getting pretty close to buyout status on this one. And once we get to that point, a lot more often than not, we do see that these cards will see kind of a lasting increase in price. I've been messing around a little bit with Katakuri in the current format, and I will say, I did not realize how good the alternate art for Parosparrow looked. So even if you're not looking to play yellow and you're just, you know, a collector, definitely one I would recommend picking up for your collection. Very nice looking card. Honestly, might be one of my favorite alternate arts from set 3 now. We are seeing a little bit of an increase on your Charlotte Linlin's price. Last week I think it was about $4, and now we're coming up on $6 now. So Charlotte Linlin going up in price a little bit, you know, makes sense. SR is still seeing a lot of play, and as I mentioned, you know, the last couple weeks, while not confirmed, some pretty reputable leakers have said that we are getting a yellow purple Big Mom Pirates type leader in OPO8, and I think that might be supported by a reveal we got for OPO7 being a purple searcher for both Animal Kingdom and Big Mom Pirates. So A bit weird to have a purple searcher for Big Mom Pirates if we don't end up getting some purple Big Mom Pirates in the future. And being that Big Mom Pirates have traditionally been yellow, it would only make sense if the purple Big Mom Pirate leaders kind of come together in a purple yellow leader. But other than that, that's it for OPO3. I guess, pudding is still one I'd also keep your eye on. If we get a purple yellow Big Mom Pirates type leader, this one is going to be able to search both the purple and the yellow, as it is not restricted by color. So going to be a great searcher for the deck, alongside that new event searcher that we mentioned getting spoiled for OPO7. So that's it for OPO3. Diving in now to OPO4. Again, not a lot to talk about for OPO4, really just a couple cards we're going to look at here. Leader cards for OPO4, the lowest of all the sets. Makes sense, as a lot of these leaders are not all that playable. Personally, I've always got a soft spot for Queen, and I will definitely be messing around with this one again in OPO6, and I have kind of been, this has been my deck of choice now for the remainder of the OPO5 format. Really just like the way this deck plays, and how it kind of feels like a puzzle, and once you solve the puzzle, you've kind of got a lock, which is probably unfun for a lot of people to play against, but I just like the idea of how this deck plays, and I always enjoy it. So definitely having a lot of fun with Queen, and looking forward to the new support it gets in OPO6. But yeah, other than that, leader cards for OPO4 relatively cheap. You've got your Rebecca, Vivi, Doflamingo kind of around $50, Rebecca being a little bit more, but other than that, your leaders for OPO4 are rather cheap. For sealed product, starting to see OPO4 come down in price as well. This one peaked at about 180, and we're at about 160 now, so only about a $20 decrease in price. But being one of the, I don't know, OPO3 and OPO4 I definitely think were the most underwhelming sets. I feel like OPO4 kind of takes the crown for me though, because while now OPO3 is underwhelming, I feel like a lot of the leaders and cards in the OPO3 format were very good, which made the set more exciting. Whereas with OPO4, even on release, none of the new leaders were super relevant in the meta, and most of the cards weren't super impactful either. But that's just my personal opinion. Definitely think O4 has been the weakest of the main sets thus far, but I don't know about this one. If I was a sealed person, I would not be investing heavily into OPO4, but we do have some good cards in OPO4, like a lot of good yellow cards, some good black cards as well. So depending on how the format develops, we could see as a whole this one increasing pretty significantly as a whole set. But as of right now, set still feels pretty underwhelming to me. But starting off with our main set cards, I did mention Doflamingo last week, and I am bringing it up again because it has seen just a small increase in price. I think only about $1, but still being one of the cheaper SRs. Definitely still one I'd consider picking up if you don't have it already. But I will mention that the list for Uta that won the nationals in Japan did not run Doflamingo, so definitely something to keep in mind there. I think a lot of current lists and lists that people have been messing around with have ran Doflamingo as their top end, but honestly looking like the Eustace Captain Kid is being the kind of best top end card for that deck. And to me that kind of makes sense, especially going into the EBO1 format. Uta being a leader which can draw a lot of cards makes it very easy to defend your Eustace Captain Kid if it sticks on the board. Just being able to essentially draw 2 cards per turn generally is going to mean you're going to have a lot of counter cards in hand. And that's not to mention the fact that if you have a Nami on board, you're getting to draw 3 cards a turn, once for your start of turn, once for attacking with Uta, and once for attacking with Nami, all for only 2 Dawn, 1 for the Nami effect and 1 for the Uta. Definitely very powerful, leading to large hand sizes. and with the new Sanji 2K counter for the deck in EBO1, definitely think Kid is the way to go for the Uta deck right now. Same thing kind of for the alternate art Doflamingo, seeing it go up in price just a little bit. It's about $50 now. Not really reflected by this graph you see here, as you're seeing it says about $40 and dropping down to $40. Currently our cheapest listing is $48, so right on that $50 mark. Doflamingo is still a very good card, and as we are getting closer to the OPO6 format, this does see play in decks like Verona, as well as Yamato, depending on what variant of the deck you decide to play. The SP Boa Hancock, like we saw with the alternate art from set 1, is dropping down in price. Honestly, kind of glad to see this. I've always thought the Boa was a little bit overpriced, so it does kind of make me wish I had decided to sell my extra copy. I just kind of never got around to it, but it is what it is. About $130 now on the Boa. And just again want to bring up your Sabo, both the regular and the alternate art card sees a lot of play in the OPO6 format and is still looking to see substantial play in the EBO1 format over in the East. So if you've not picked up this card, I still think $8 is a very fair price for this one, and would encourage you to pick this one up if you have any plans to play black in the near future. 5 cost 6,000 power blockers are just some of the best, stat lines in the game, especially when they have counter and a very good on play effect like Sabo, helping you filter out your hand as well as making your characters immune to KO effects. Very, very powerful, especially when you consider the fact that black in general has been kind of the most dominant deck from what we can tell in the OPO6 format, and with black's main kind of ability being able to KO opponents' characters, Sabo making you immune for a turn, definitely a very powerful effect, and one that I imagine we'll be seeing play for a long time to come. So same thing with the alternate art, about $50 right now. If you are someone who likes to play with alternate arts, or even just a collector who doesn't have this one in your collection, I think we're getting close to a good time to buy. We're seeing this one slowly come down in price. So I'd keep your eye on this one, and if it gets much lower, could be a good time to invest in this one, to be honest with you. But that's it for OPO4. Let's now jump into OPO5. And again, honestly, this week, I don't have too terribly much to talk about with OPO5. Just because, as a whole, I said we're seeing a lot of things drop down in price. So, starting off with our leaders, your Betty, Sabo, Corazon. Nothing really to speak of here. Sakazuki and NL maintaining their price points from last week, with Mono Purple Luffy actually dropping down a little bit. I'm a little surprised to see it drop down as much as it did so soon. I kind of expected that this one would drop down in price just because it sees no play next set, and it doesn't look like it will be seeing any play in the EBO1 format either. Just doesn't play very well into the decks of the next format, unfortunately. But with it still being a Luffy leader, I thought it would take a little longer for this one to drop down in price, but could see this one drop down more, seeing as it's already dropped down about $15 from where it was at last week. So one I'd keep my eye on for sure if you're looking to pick this one up. For sealed product, unlike the other 4 sets, we saw the other 4 sets dropping in price. We're seeing OPO5 dropped in price, past tense, but now it's going back up again. Definitely still just probably the most sought after set aside from Romance Dawn, so makes sense to me, especially being the most recent set. Definitely one that newer players especially going to want to get their hands on, even just to crack open a box. $260 to crack open a box is absurd in my opinion, but I know there are people out there who do it. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is what it is. I do hope that if and when we get these reprints that Bandai has promised, they're at least fairly substantial for set 5, because this is a set that a lot of people just want to open, being that it's got those 4 chase cards. So I do hope that a good amount of product gets reprinted for OPO 5, if anything. For your SPs, no significant changes. Kaido now being your least expensive. Sucks for me. I pulled, I want to say 3 of this one and ended up having to buy the Nami, Uta, and NL. 3 I pulled were Yamato, Rob Lucci, and Kaido. Glad I got the Yamato, but kind of sucks that these were the ones I had to buy. Thankfully, I got them when they were only a fractions of the price of what they are now. But, I think these are some of the best looking cards in the game. And as a collector, I highly would encourage anyone who's collecting the game to pick up copies of these SP cards. They look absolutely phenomenal. The texture and foiling on these is really just immaculate. Really like the NL just because I think as a character, he fits the aesthetic of this style of card very, very well. But no significant changes for the SP cards. I think they're maintaining their current value. Nami maybe dropping down a little bit, as I think this one, was around 270. Being down at 240 is good, I think. I don't ever see this one dropping below 200 though. So not a lot, like I said, not a lot to talk about with OPO 5. And I am bringing up Kaido just because I think this is a good card. And while it might not have, the power to be put in any of the current decks in the format, I think in future formats, this is a card that we could see pop up in the future. Being a secret rare and only $7, if you've not got copies of this card, I would probably just pick them up to have them, because I think this is a card that one day could be pretty good again. We have seen it seeing some play in Sakazuki decks right now, but in the OPO 6 and EBO 1 format, the Kaido is absent from those lists. But depending on what blue leaders and support we get in the future, this is one I definitely think could pop up back up again. And with it only being $7 right now, honestly, like I said, I think this is a good pickup if you don't have it, despite the fact that it's not seeing all that much, if any, play right now and into the future. Same thing with the alternate art. Great looking alternate art. It's only 20 bucks right now for an alternate art secret rare. Lots of listings on it. No one wants this card, unfortunately. Like I said, I really do love the art on this card. So if nothing else, if you're a collector, pick up a copy of this card while it's 20 bucks. I don't imagine this will stay 20 bucks forever. We kind of saw that it started around 20, then kind of jumped up in price once it started seeing play in Sakazuki. And now we're seeing it drop down in price again. But even with all that in mind, I still think this is probably a decent pickup, and just one I would hold on to for the future. For your other secret rare, Monkey D. Luffy, we did see a red purple Luffy list win an event over in the East for EBO 1. While we're still early, we could start seeing more red purple Luffy decks popping up. And they were running, of course, your 10 cost Luffy in that deck. I think that deck is the only one where you're really able to play this card and get good value out of it. So if you've not got your Luffys and are maybe interested in playing red purple Luffy in EBO 1, I would probably pick these up, because again, it's a secret rare, it's Luffy, it's only $15. I don't really see it getting much cheaper than this. So if you've not got them, I would probably pick them up if you're newer to the game. For your alternate art, we saw this one drop down in price last week. But again, I think these secret rare alternate arts, it's only a matter of time before they go back up in price again, especially the Luffy here. It's Luffy, it's a secret rare, it's Gear 5, a lot of things going for it. Especially if red purple Luffy starts seeing more success in the EBO 1 format. And last card, as I've mentioned most weeks, is your Rob Lucci. I don't think this card is going to be this cheap forever. We're seeing that the alternate art has gone from about $60 down to around $45. If you've not gotten alternate art for your collection, or if you're someone who likes to play them in your deck, I would say now's your time to strike, because as we get closer to OP06 format, I would be surprised if this card doesn't increase in price, just because of how viable it is in at least 2 of the most played decks in the OP06 format. But that is it for OP05, making good time here. Not quite an hour yet. So let's jump into our promo cards with our Dawn. We're seeing the Dawns start to go up a little bit again. I know Robin was about 75 last week. Now we're up at 85. Still got some cheaper ones here, but a lot of these Dawn cards are going back up again. Your winners from your Volume 1 pack, which we should be getting more of now. I know I just got one last week from participating in a Treasure Cup, and should be getting a couple more from the Treasure Cup I played in yesterday. I think for top 64 you get 3 of them, so I should be getting a couple more of those. I've already got my set, so definitely just going to be selling those, making back a little bit of money, because Lord knows I spend too much on this card game. But as a whole, it's looking like the online ones are a little bit more valuable, with the Volume 1 with your Robin and your Luffy. For those who don't know, there were like 2 waves of these. There was the Volume 1, which had the Robin, Luffy, Brook, Sanji, and Usopp, and then there was Volume 2, which had your Jinbei, Frankie, Nami, Zoro, and Chopper. And Chopper being the biggest winner from the Volume 2, but both Robin and Luffy being pretty decently priced, and Brook also not being too bad either. So Sanji and Usopp kind of being the losers from that first pack, but all in all, still very expensive for Dawn cards. I think they look great. Even if you're a collector, I don't know, having all these lined up just really cool. Does kind of suck that the way we got them was so much harder, made it so much harder to get all 10 than in Japan, where I believe they just sold something on like Premium Bandai that had all 10 in it for like 25 bucks. So kind of sucks in that regard, but hey, you know, more collectible cards for the West, I guess. I don't know. I'm bringing up Gordon and the film Law, because Red Purple Law has also been seeing more success in EB01. While it doesn't look like it made into the top like 6 or so at the Nationals, and I don't have a way to look at list outside of that. A couple players have been, you know, documenting list from that event, but there's no comprehensive list, so not sure how well Red Purple Law performed at that event, but we have been seeing it do well at flagships and other events over in the East. And while initially I said Gordon would go down a lot in price because we essentially get a reprint in OP06, I think it's also film type, same effect, same stat line. It's just also got, it's a different name, and it's also got the Revolutionary Army typing, if I recall. But what we're actually seeing is that now the Red Purple Law decks are playing 4 copies of Gordon and 4 copies of the new card. So essentially 8 copies of Gordon in the deck now with that one. So while I thought this one would drop down in price because it just gets replaced, looks like you still might want to hold on to your copies of Gordon if you've got them, and plan on playing Red Purple Law, because it looks like you play both of them. And for the Trafalgar Law, this is still played in Red Purple Law. Only thing I want to mention here though is that it was revealed that I'm not sure how they're being distributed, but there is a reprint of this card being distributed somehow over in the East. It's got different art, so it's not got the figurine art, so honestly looks a lot better in my opinion. Might be kind of like a winner card for their locals, not too sure, and not sure if and when we'll get that card, but I just thought it was worth bringing up that we might be getting a reprint of this card, as it is still seeing some play. But I will say there's no guarantee that we do get that reprint. Because because we don't always get them all. I know, for example, we never got the different art for Jet Pistol. There was like a full art version of Jet Pistol that they got over in the East, and honestly a little disappointed that we haven't got that card yet. I mean, card's not really all that relevant anymore, but still would like to have the card. The art on that one was very cool, so I still hope we get it someday. But point being, not sure we'll get that reprint, but it is a thing we may end up getting. And if Red Purple Law sees success, this one could end up going up in price, so it would be nice if we did get that reprint, if that turns out to be the case. For your Uta battle cards, thankfully we're seeing a lot of these cards drop down in price, which is good to see. I don't think any of them are going to maintain their price point, assuming that Bandai doesn't screw up again and is able to send out the packs that were supposed to be given as participation for these events. I guess we'll have to wait and see. This Luffy winner definitely being the cheapest of the Luffy winners, and I think it makes sense because while I still think it looks cool, it's definitely the least exciting of the cards in comparison to like your store championship Luffy or your first anniversary winner Luffy. Definitely not anywhere near as good looking as either of those two, but I would imagine that this one will go back up in price again as the events kind of start to, rotate out. Right now, lots of these events are happening. People are winning and they're just wanting to unload their cards. But if you hold on to them, I don't think you'll regret it. I would imagine that over time they will just kind of go up in price again, especially once the events are no longer happening. The Bandai Card Fest Luffy settling around $100. We looked at it last week and I think it was about the same, so seems like $100 is going to be where this one settles. Definitely a great looking card, definitely one you'll want in your collection if you're a collector. For champ or event pack cards, your nationals variants starting to settle down now. We can see that some of them are even just like matching the other listings, like this Bartolomeo, both the regular event pack variant and the championship event pack variant about the same price. Suru being considerably more with that full art, but do keep in mind that we are getting that best collection premium Bandai binder that does have a different art for Suru, and personally I'm not the biggest fan of this cartoony art for Suru, so personally for any black ticks in the future I'm just holding out for the one that is being given out in the binder, because I think that one has art that is a lot better than this one personally. Like the colors, I don't love the cartoony aesthetic of this one personally. But other than that, none of these cards are all that expensive, really starting to see them drop down in price, which is nice to see. Those who've been playing early will remember cards like Jinbei being well over $100 at one point, which did suck a little bit. Still seeing Bartolomeo be pretty expensive, and seeing as this is a card that doesn't have any other printings is still a little bit outrageous in my opinion. And I definitely wish that Bandai wouldn't print cards exclusive to these event packs. I get making things collectible and giving you incentive to go to these events, but ultimately this is a card game, and I think that some variant of all cards should be accessible to new players. So with these cards being basically inaccessible to new players, I do think it is a little bit of a misstep from Bandai. Winter cards, we are seeing a lot of the winter cards drop down in price, and reason being is that we now have these championship versions, which I would argue most of these look quite a bit better than the winter variants. Nami still holding value, Bonnie's still good, but really kind of the more sought after variants are going to be these championship variants. Love the art on most of these, like just the full art but with the backgrounds is really, really awesome. Like the Bonnie, Brooke, the Izo, all these cards just look incredible. I really like the Mario 2. I don't think I have this one, so I'm going to be picking up some of these. Because with the winter variant, you know, look at that. You don't got the Pacifista in the background anymore. And I really just like the colors and the aesthetic of this variant of the card. So very, very excited that we've got these full art variants. Love the art on them. Definitely going to be trying to get at least one of each in my collection. Getting the Nami's going to be a little bit rough, but you know, the things we do for our cardboard rectangles. Judge pack cards more or less dropping. We've seen now that we're at the end more or less of our OP05 formats. I think we've only got like one treasure cup left, so most players are more or less done with this format, and so they're just trying to sell their purple stuff while they still can, because going into the next format we're not going to be seeing a lot of success for purple. Definitely falls out of meta relevance pretty hard, but we do start see some more play and success in EB01. The new secret rare bond clay seems to do a lot of work for those decks. Lastly, for our promos, we've got the sealed battle event cards. Fortunately, we are finally starting to see these kind of come down in price a little bit, but still very expensive, and it's a bit of a shame, as again, like the event pack cards, I wish Bandai wouldn't make cards like these which are locked behind these specific events, especially when you don't even like, not a lot of these cards are out on the market. You only got 2 cards per pack. Like, if they're gonna do something like this, why not just put one of each card in the pack, you know? I don't know. I hate that Bandai does things this way. Like, if you're gonna do this, make them alternate arts of the promos or something. I don't know. Making unique cards locked behind specific events just kind of sucks. Lastly, let's talk about our starter deck stuff. Starter deck 3, about $46 right now, but really the only thing I want to mention here is that Love Beam is going up quite a bit in price, and there are only 7 listings left. So only thing I can think of is that people are anticipating this to be very good in some of the new Warlord type stuff from set 7 with the new Boa Hancock leader. I guess it is also worth mentioning that we do get a Kuja Pirate Searcher as well. So this being both searchable off of the Warlord Searcher and the Kuja Pirate Searcher. So may end up finding a place in either one of those decks, but we'll just have to wait and see. For purple stuff, like we just saw with the Judge Queen, purple stuff is now starting to drop down in price because it falls out of play in set 6, but you know, still $30 is outrageous for a starter deck card, and hopefully, even though it's not going to be seeing a lot of play, eventually Bandai gets out some form of reprints for either the starter decks or just some alternate art variants of cards like Queen, which do have a pretty hefty price tag. For starter deck 6, still seeing both your Hinas and Great Eruptions being rather expensive, and this makes sense because they still see a lot of play in Sakazuki decks. We do see that maybe Hina might drop down a little bit in price, because I think I've seen that Hina goes down to maybe a 2 to 3 of, whereas Great Eruption stays at a 4 of. So might see some slight changes in the prices here, but ultimately I would imagine they're just going to go up, because with Great Eruption specifically, it sees play in every black deck, I think. So even decks like Gecko Moria now are going to be playing this deck. So if you haven't been playing black now and you want to be playing Gecko Moria set 6, you're going to need the Great Eruptions. Not sure if they play the Hina in the Gecko Moria decks. I'd have to go and check, but I feel like Moria or Hina doesn't really fit the Moria playstyle, but Great Eruption definitely still does, just being a very powerful cost reduction card that replaces itself is very, very good. And then lastly, yellow starter deck, $42. Lin is coming down a little bit more in price, and if you're planning to play yellow in the future, and you don't have your playset of Linlands, I would strongly encourage you to pick these up now while they're coming down in price, because as I've mentioned, Katakuri is still seeing a significant amount of play and success in both the OPO6 and EBO1 format, and all the lists I've looked at are running 4 copies of this 7-cost Charlotte Linland. So if you've not got them and plan on playing Katakuri, I think you should pick these up now, because I don't think they're going to stay at this price point as we get, you know, closer to set 6, EBO1, etc. But that is going to wrap things up for today's video. So just a little bit over an hour on this one, so able to cut back the time just a little bit on this one. Definitely excited to continue to watch and see how the EBO1 format develops, and also very excited to see the remainder of set 7 spoilers. I do think the set 7 release is actually coming up pretty fast over in the East, so excited to see what else that set has to offer, and then of course how it's going to affect our market. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, please do consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you've not done so already, as I do try to push out a new Market Watch video every week. And starting here pretty soon, I'm also planning to do kind of weekly news roundups talking about spoilers and just kind of general news and announcements for the game. So if that's something you think you'd be into, definitely consider subscribing to the channel, as I hope to be doing more content like the market watches and just, like I said, the news roundups here in the near future. But that is going to wrap things up for me. Again, thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace.